Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming along to my talk, How Art Affects Society. And a warm thank you goes to Nadine Abdel Ghaffar and the entire team. It's impressive what you put together. I'm very happy and impressed to have seen this, and also especially this going together from heritage sites and contemporary art. Congratulations. Thank you. So, Flux, on whose behalf I'm here today, is an independent research institution based in Zurich, in Switzerland. And I founded it together with Annemarie Bucher about 10 years ago. When we met, we realized something like this. You know, it hit us. We thought we were very keen on changing art discourse and art practice. We were not happy with the situation, we're still not. So actually that's this sound, that's what it feels like. And that's why we started with Flux. So we brought together our previously separate activities under one roof and called it Flux. Annemarie is an art and landscape historian and a curator, and I myself, I'm a practicing artist and a philosopher. We have run many collaborative projects in various regions across the world, some of which I will address in this talk. Nadine Abdel Ghaffar has invited us to share some of our thoughts on current art developments based on our research. So today, as everyone probably in this room knows, today's global art context is complex. A lot of different parallel dynamics are at work and are occurring at lightning speed, and predictions are difficult. So in this talk, I will focus on the relation between art and society. We'll talk about different notions of art, the art market. Some of the terms that you heard before in the talk, previous talk, will come up, but I will share with you a completely different perspectives on these topics. And I will also then draw attention to what Annemarie and I call art in actions, or artists working reality. I will do so by showing art from recent exhibitions, vinyls, TV broadcasts, as well as images of our collaborations with colleagues around the world. So I try to bring in also a lot of links and references, and you're most welcome if you like to follow up with that. So that's why I included it. So maybe you're interested then to go to certain research platforms. I will upload the talk onto my webpage, so then you can download it from there. And you have access to all the names and all the notes. So I will be summarizing matters. So also all the topics that I address, I've been writing articles about it, so if you're interested in going into more detail, please have a look at these. They're also downloadable from the webpage. So I really will today talk in a summarized form, add one to the next, try to make it very plausible, but then maybe sometimes a bit of shocking mentally from one topic to the others to draw the line that I would like to share with you. So, if you allow me, I would first say a few words about myself. I'm also a practicing artist and philosopher, and I have made a living by selling art, winning awards, doing art and architecture projects. In my early career, I even funded, with my art sellings, I funded the formal training. So I won the first award before I entered formal training. So since 2009, I also hold a part-time professorship in drawing and painting at the Zurich University of the Arts. I am referring to this trajectory to highlight that actually I work in this complex reality that I will talk about. So it's not me complaining about something where I'm not partaking. It's actually filling all these problematic situations we are in, and we definitely have to look for solutions and to see how we can position ourselves within that. So, but not only that, I wear various hats. In addition to the various roles that I have just mentioned, I have also been part of numerous governmental and non-governmental juries. I've run symposiums, curated exhibitions, and so on. And Annemarie's activities also cover a broad range of activities. She is primarily known for her contribution to landscape history and the consultancy work she does for governmental bodies. That's my entry point, practice-based and practice-led research. So let me add that our interest in how art affects society is scholarly, but most importantly, we take a practice-based and a practice-led perspective to this question. Linda Candy has presented an excellent summary of practice-based and practice-led research in her article, Practice-Based Research Guide. The article is part of the Australian Creativity and Cognition Studio reports and was published in 2006. Linda Candy is a writer and researcher whose subject is creativity in art and science. And she's also the co-founder of ACM SITCI that you maybe know. SITCI, I quote from their webpage, is the premier international society for professionals, academics, and students who are interested in human technology and human-computer interaction. So if you wish to know more about her work, I suggest to go to the researchgate.net. And there you find a lot of articles of her and also further information. She defines practice-based and practice-led research as follows. If a creative artifact is the basis of the contribution to knowledge, the research is practice-based. And if the research leads primarily to new understandings about practice, it's practice-led. So this ties in with our key focus at FOAFlux. We are primarily seeking to gain a new understanding of practice and in practice. So our research is practice-based and practice-led. And our methods include action research, action art, interpretive, interactionism, and so on. So we work with temporary teams and in partnerships, as well as in various discursive and geographical spaces. And so we are used to working with multiple perspectives, requirements, and expectations. Now this may seem like obvious, that's the way we should do it, but actually, especially within academic context, it's often the other way around. One goes from a concept, an idea, and then it addresses reality. So we do our research the other way around. We see what is happening in reality, and from there we then bring it back to reflection. So it's a new approach that she has written this in 2006, and it's slowly being used more and more. So obviously a lot more could be said about art and research, but it's not now the time for that. So let me turn to how art affects society. I will illustrate my talk with images, and we'll use two presentation modes. So sometimes the photos provide impressions, visually enriching my comments, and then again I will directly address certain images. How does art affect society? Well, we all know it. It does so in many ways. Let me start with the notion of seismographers. Understanding artists as seismographers, as people who feel driven to communicate what they sense is going on around them, makes art a mirror of living conditions, of mental landscapes, political realities, interactions between people and non-humans, you name it. So understanding art as bearers of tradition, as people who pass on traditions within particular communities, means that art plays an active role in what that community, its opinion makers, value. Artists as seismographers and artists as bearers of tradition, on the one hand, these two are two sides of the same coin. On the other hand, different societies tend to more strongly emphasize one or the other. This becomes apparent in terms such as contemporary art and traditional art. I will come back to this point later. So, artists as seismographers. One of the current shows at London's Tate Modern is titled Artists and Society. The show is on until 19th November and is well documented on the Tate webpage. It includes 66 works from the Tate Modern collection. It focuses on artists whose work addresses social and historical realities. That is, the artists are relating their work to social and historical realities, either in the work itself, in its title, or in the additional information. The work becomes, these works become mirrors of realities, and as the Tate webpage puts it, makes viewers aware of urgent issues and is arguing for change. We could specify this by adding art triggers empathy, reflection, and memory. The exhibition includes works by Richard Hamilton, Joseph Beuys, Lydia Clark, and so on. The works are paintings, drawings, photographies, installations, projections, objects, and sculptures. Let us have a look at the exhibition works by Dia Alasawi, Ellen Gallagher, Arthur Smyski, and Yinka Jonibert. Dia Alasawi's work is titled Sabra and Shatila Massacre. Dia Alasawi was born in the late 1930s in Baghdad, Iraq. Sabra and Shatila were the names of refugee camps in Beirut in Lebanon. In 1982, according to the Tate webpage, civilians at the camps, mostly Palestinians, were killed by a militia associated with the Christian Lebanese right-wing party. After this incident, Alasawi began working on this large 3 to 7.5 meter ink, wax, and crayon painting. He drew and painted on paper, which was then mounted on canvas. You may recall a famous modern painting to which Alasawi's work is stylistically in depth. Yes, that's it. Thank you. So here is Ellen Gallagher's Bird in Hand, which she produced in 2006. Gallagher was born in Rhode Island in the USA and lives and works in New York and in Rotterdam. And what motivates her work are narratives surrounding the slave trade that inform her poetic drawings. In this one, which measures about 2.4 to 3 meters, she used oil paint, ink, paper, polymer, salt, and gold leaf on canvas. Yet another example is Arthur Smyski's Democracies of 2009. Smyski was born in Poland in the mid-60s. This work consists of a video that can be shown either on 20 flat screens or as a single projection. The video, which includes no spoken commentary, features 20 short documentaries of political demonstrations, military parades, memorial services, and football matches. So the Tate web text tells us that the video explore moments of collective fever in public space. How does art affect society? Back to the question again, so I'm going to go in circles. This question invites us to talk about human societies. All of us are part of one or of several societies. So whether our voice is large, small, powerful, neglected, we all play a part in it. We all contribute to the reality of our societies. The art we just looked at contributes and communicates on this individual level to us. So the poetic work of Alice Sawi, Ellen Gallagher, or Arthur Smiskey, it's something we can look at that triggers our feelings, our memories, our empathy, anger, frustrations. And these works are open for interpretation. There are as many interpretations as there are viewers, we know that. And the artists may linking their work to particular incidents, work and shape our responses to these images, as well as direct our focus, feelings, and thinking. So Alice Sawi's and Ellen Gallagher's work, they speak to us with poetic means about violence, atrocities, and human despair. By stating the reasons motivating the work, by positioning it as a response to the, for example, massacre of civilians at Sabra Shatila refugee camp, these works also become memorials to past events and keeps our memories alive. Smiskey's uncommented videos, whose title links them to the notions of democracy, leaves us, the viewers, to form our own impression of the unfolding events, to establish connections between the mass gatherings, and to question their relation to democracy. So in this sense, art is real. It is a mirror of societal and historical realities that we may look at and use. Thus, potentially, its effect on society is given, yet to unfold, we as viewers need to activate this potentiality through connecting with the work, unconsciously or intentionally. We need to interpret the work, which again informs our perception of reality and might even inform and guide our actions. Needless to say that the creators are also viewers once they have produced the work. Now, if we think about art in these terms, no wonder societies try to influence which art is valued more or less, and in the worst case, should be silenced. So art, be it poetic, informative, critical, and so on, is a form of cultural production and provides reality checks. Art, as we know, also uses participatory modes. We all know various examples of that. I brought one along that I would like to discuss. It's also my last example from the Tate exhibition. And it's the work by Inka Shonibera. He created a work titled The British Library, which he produced in 2014. Inka was born in London in the early 60s and moved to Lagos in Nigeria at the age of 3, where he grew up, and now he's living back in London again. So the British Library is a gigantic work. It comprises over 6,000 books, all bound with Dutch wax print fabric and arranged on rows of shelves. And some books, or some parts of some books, are documented on the web page. It's called the British Library Installation. So there, some parts of these books are online accessible. And let me quote from the Tate Gallery information. So names are printed on gold leaf on the spines of 2,700 of the books. So some have a name, others not. And the majority of which are of first and second generation immigrants to Britain. both celebrated and lesser known people. And there are also among the books some referring to people who have opposed immigration. Adjacent to the bookshelves is a study space with tablets where viewers are able to access the artworks webpage. So you can learn there more about the people named on the books, review materials selected by the artists that represent different perspectives on immigration. And visitors are also invited to submit their own stories. So it's a growing archive. So here participation has many forms, from just being able to be part of it to actually contribute and do and decide things oneself. So there's a huge road one could take when working in participatory modes. So if we understand artists, as I've tried to show now in the last few minutes, as seismographers, we could argue, of course, that all art somehow holds up a mirror for us to see reflected what artists see and want to make seen, whether the work is poetic, documentary, a collage, a visualization, a critique, an installation, or whatever. So interestingly, before that talk, there also was a link to other disciplines. I also prepared that because I would like to zoom to the bird's eye view for a moment and relate art to other disciplines. So basically all disciplines are come to terms with our reality. And they do so in many different ways, of course. Their objectives and methods, and hence the outcomes, are different. And yet there are similarities. Focusing on these similarities with a comparative mindset is what brings to the fore the potentials of art for future development. So let me expand this idea just a bit. Take art, philosophy, and physics. Each of these disciplines work on reality, trying to understand and make it accessible. Each provides insights, using very different means, of course, into what is going on around us. Or take art and philosophy. Art is similar to philosophy in the sense that it can ponder any political, or any subject that it wants to, be it a park, love, an incident, a political issue, whatever. Take art and mathematics. Art is similar to mathematics in the sense that on the one hand it does basic research, it is self-reflective, continually developing new means to further its output. On the other hand, it serves other disciplines, so does mathematics. And art helps other disciplines by visualizing their findings. So by raising awareness of certain topics and by critiquing and challenging our understandings of these topics. Art speaks to large audiences, triggers immediate responses, and makes complex issues accessible at once. It ignites and supports discussion and raises questions. Art promotes idea. That's why so many companies like to work, and disciplines like to work with art, because art is capable to promote ideas. And it makes us aware of potentials and risks. For example, of artificial intelligence, cloning, or gene manipulation. So again, we have one coin and we have two different sides. So let us look at Wei Mo Hung's painting. She uses painting as a way of thinking through material. If you're interested in this topic and you haven't read it yet, I would recommend James Elkins on painting, where he compares the process of thinking in material with alchemy. Wei Mo Hung was born in Shanghai. Her lived experience and formal training was in the US, in Switzerland, and now in Berlin. and of course in Shanghai. So therefore she has a multi-layered experiences of ideas, everyday life. And this multitude of realities is what concerns her in her work. I know her from her studies at Zurich University of the Arts, and she's interested in the coexistence of very different realities and worldviews. So in European, American, and Chinese perspectives, in mental, imaginary, and lived spaces. And she brings together these multiple traditions and norms in search of what she calls a third space, a multitude of realities. And she has described the objective of her work as melting down these different landscapes, creating a place that vibrates, a place with shifting views, and a place that overlays. Thank you. So the next example that I would like to share, and I'm going to again introduce it a bit, and then I have a short video where she is talking about her work. Mari Griesmar, I also know her from her studies at our institution. She constructs substitutes to meet the challenges facing coral reefs. She is a passionate scuba diver, and her underwater experience inspired her to focus on the habitat of corals. So the first-hand experience has led her to research biology and water sciences, and to work alongside scientists. So for example, in 2016, she worked at KAUST. It's the King Abdullah University of Science and Technology in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. And KAUST runs several core labs, one of which is the Coastal and the Marine Resources Lab. The Artist in Lab program at Zurich University of the Arts had organized the residency. So I'd like to point out that they have their calls always online on the residency, and whoever is interested can apply. Her residency at KAUST enabled Mari to learn from the research across disciplines, exchange ideas and theories, and to join researchers on field trips. About 2 years ago, I asked her, couldn't you talk about your work and make a short visual note of that? So that's what I would like to show you. So I'm not sure about the sound, if it's easy to understand when she talks. She's also, her mother tongue is French, but I think also visually you get an impression of what she's working on. I'm sorry, I forgot the, yeah. Thank you.
Miss Marie is a Swiss artist. As a scuba diver, my main working element is water. I produce paintings, but also conceptual artworks resulting from my diving experiences and research on biology and water sciences. I'm trying to keep track of my underwater journeys by exploring the threshold between objective observations and subjective visual impressions. For each work, I develop a specific language by using several mediums. Through diverse techniques and strategies, I get to express different ideas. For instance, a research based on limnology, which is the study of the lake, led me in 2016 to immerse raw canvases in various Swiss lakes for several months. It was with the objective of capturing the colors of water. Actually, once the canvases retrieved, dried, and stabilized, their surfaces appeared as substrate and trace of underwater organic structures, such as algae, shells, sediment, whatever you could find in a lake. I like to shift my posture as an artist and let the nature continuing the work I started. By processing like this, I get to be always surprised. Still in the same idea of working underwater, I spent lately 3 months in Saudi Arabia studying the biological structure of corals and their ecosystems. It was a residency where my focus lied in producing artificial reef. To accomplish my research, I had the chance to work closely with marine biologists. It was from the Kaus University, which is in Jeddah. And there, I quickly started to analyze the morphology of organisms constituting a reef. The methodology I used was to observe corals either as skeletons in the lab or taking impression and drawing directly underwater. At the end, I kind of created a morpho-analysis database that I transformed into clay sculptures. And if you're curious enough, you can visit them on the seabed of the Red Sea.
Another artist who focuses on technology and science, I mean, there are many, I just was looking for some examples so that I can share the points I would like to address, is Trevor Paglen. And I came across his work when I was looking at Das Echo der Zukunft, The Echo of the Future, by the filmer Tanja Küchle. She interviewed several artists, some of which are working with DNA alterations. They work with egg cells, artificial intelligence, and mass surveillance. So the film was accessible for a limited time on Arte TV, a European broadcaster and online platform for all audiovisual genres with cultural characteristics. So from Switzerland, we cannot access all the film because it's a French-German collaboration. I don't know from Egypt, but sometimes they have really a lot of very good documentaries. So maybe you check it out. Maybe also some of the films are accessible from here. In an article published in Culture Mag in 2010, Trevor Paglen is quoted as saying that he is worried about what happens when humans are taken out of the decision-making process, particularly in matters related to artificial intelligence and mass surveillance. So if these machines are just enrolling and we have not a say in that, so this, he thinks, is highly problematic. So one of his works that explores these worrying dynamics is Sight Machine. He produced this piece by collaborating with Kronos Quartet. Any one of you knows that one? It's a string quartet. It's a lot of fun to view their productions. They're very experimental. They've been doing work for 30 years, but not showing widely. So, but I'm really, I think it's really interesting what they do. So they play Egyptian electronic music by, for example, the musician Islam Gypsy, Laurie Anderson, Steve Reich, and so on. And Trevor Paglen and the Kronos Quartet, they presented the Sight Machine this July at the Barbican Hall in London. And it's a multimedia performance featuring consumer-grade facial detection to advanced surveillance systems. So they were performing music and they were using these surveillance systems. I quote, "The musicians are monitored by cameras feeding into a suite of artificial intelligence algorithms. The software turns this abstract information back into images." I'm going to show you a short video just in a minute. So the machines are showing us how they are perceiving what is taking place, how they read it, and how they store, and so in that sense, how they see. Utilizing algorithms ranging from consumer-grade facial detection to advanced surveillance systems and even guided missiles, Sight Machine is a fascinating and unsettling illustration of the discrepancy between art, between what we experience as human beings and what machine sees. So that's on the Barbican webpage. And here is the example. performance draws our attention to the imperfectness of such systems, and that we should think about the consequences when they are applied, and how we can keep our human decision-making as a part in the chain that in the development of this. So now, this part will be very short, art discourses. So far I have focused on the role of artists as seismographers and as tradition bearers. I have exemplified this perspective with works that I showed from the Tate Modern. Works that keep alive memory, that guide our attention, and that make us think about important topical issues. I have talked about art's range of themes and its use of basic research, its close working relationship with scientists, and its application with machines. So actually we covered a lot of topics already. And finally, I have addressed art as a communication tool for other disciplines and have positioned art as a contributor to opinion-making processes. So now let me turn to our global disposition of different notions of art, different understandings of art, and then to the art market, and finally to art in action. Since the 70s, we are all well aware of that, we have witnessed and experienced rapidly accelerating dynamics, which have interlinked our societies and geographical locations in unprecedented fashion. So nowadays, we exchange our knowledge and know-how in real time. So afterwards, we exchange, I'm sitting in Zurich, you here in Cairo, it's within seconds. This is our new reality. So this also has an effect on art and on understandings of art, because this globalization processes, they also questions our beliefs. We have to sort of sort out anew what we want to ground our behavior, our actions on. And a social global theorist, the late Ulrich Beck, he called it a mega change that is taking place, because these changes are affecting how we see the world in a paradigmatic sense. And paradigmatic means on a very profound level. So let me exemplify this with two quotes. One you've probably already read. It's by Arthur J. Miller. Art, science, and technology as we know them today will disappear. He wrote that in 2014. And that, I see it in the educational institution. It's definitely wild how fast things are changing currently. And another topic is by Parul, or quote is by Parul Dev Mukherjee. What becomes of art history when the world shrinks to a planet? So suddenly there are a lot of different understandings next to each other. So in my article, Art in Action, Make People Think, Reflections on Current Developments in Art, I wrote in detail about that. Here I just would like to sort of point to these topics. The art discourses are problematized, it's well established and discussed, but no one actually knows or can say where we will be. And I think when, let me go back to the first one, when Joe Miller says art, science, and technology as we know them today will disappear, I don't think that means that there's no art, but maybe the form and appearances and how things are interlinking is in a way that we cannot imagine today. So this brings me to the global art market, because the effects or the situation that the global art market is in will make a big point to Art in Action, that we actually should think more about social entrepreneurship with art, or art in action integrated in our lived environments. So what about the art market? Its news and best sales have become topics in mainstream newspapers and magazines. art market reports provide information on the latest developments and what to expect in the near future. So one well-known report is the Art Basel, also the art market by Art Basel and UBS, and it includes data gathered and analyzed by Arts Economics. You can find that also on the internet, artseconomics.com. The founder of Arts Economics is Claire McAndrew. She's a cultural economist specializing in the arts, antiques, and collectibles. And I think her first publications are from 2005, so she's been following the developments already for some time. Let me go back if I forgot. So we've heard it already also today. The global art market estimates that in 2018, sales turnover of 67.4 billion took place. So the sales increased year on year by 6%. And the transactions included in this 67 billion includes the binary and the secondary market, art gallery sales, auction sales, and art fair sales. The most significant art markets in 2018 were located in the US, the UK, and in China. The US accounts for 44% of sales by value. The UK regained its position as the second largest art market with 21%, while China was the third largest with 19%. In the director's foreword, Mark Spiegler reflects on the reported sales turnover and observes that the market is incredibly robust. But when we look more closely, we see that the growth very much benefits a small number of galleries, and even within those mega galleries, it's only a handful of artists, mostly per gallery, one artist, maybe two artists who are selling very well. So in other words, Spiegler points out, he's the director of the Art Basel, and he points out that a small number of artists and galleries are selling at incredible high prices and are responsible for top sales turnovers. So the best performing segment for sales year on year was dealers with turnover between $10 million and $50 million. And that was up for 17%, while the poorest performance was in the lower end of the market, below $250,000. The report also provides information on the collector spectrum in different geographical contexts. It suggests that the sales activities in the near future will shift from the Atlantic to the Pacific region, also based on previous surveys of US collectors, the art market report estimates that the majority of US collectors are aged 50 years and over. By comparison, in Asia, 46% of the collectors surveyed in Singapore were millennial collectors, and millennials represented a share of 39% of the total also in Hong Kong. So according to McAndrew, collectors from Hong Kong and Singapore had also a more strategic and planned approach to collecting, including more investment-oriented motives in building their collections. Moreover, they exhibit a higher preference for online transactions, so there's definitely a shift going on. In general, concerning buyer behavior, activity levels and spending patterns, millennial collectors, I quote, had more in common with each other across regions than in their own geographical context with collectors from other generations. The term millennials, or Generation Y, refers to the generation born in the early 80s, through to the late 90s. The report also suggests that the selling locations will be increasingly influenced by the regulatory context and the ease of buying and selling and fiscal attractiveness. Rebecca Jennings' web text for the Julius Baer Group on art market paints a similar picture. She also notes that increasingly art is valued as an asset. Less important are academic or aesthetic pleasures, as she calls it, nor does artistic passion play a central role. She also suggests that the collector's influence on artists' work is rather increasing. Just, and a quote, just as some invest in classic cars, wine, or property, others are investing in sculpture, paintings, and video works. And last mentioning of a report, this is the Art Dubai summary of the economic impact of Dubai's Art Week events in 2015. And the report draws attention to art events attracting money for the local economy and the service sector. During the 1 week Art Dubai and Desire Days Dubai in March 2015, the report believes that US $35 million was brought into the country in 7 days. The art sales during the week accounted for 60% of the local art organizations' annual sales. And the summary points out in detail the number of visitors, the overnight stays, which ones were the primary visitors, so coming to Dubai for the first time. But the report does not provide any information on the actual art sales turnover. So let me conclude. The art market looks robust, at least when we look at the top-selling galleries and their 1 or 2 top artists. On the other hand, the report suggests that below the top-ranking galleries and sales, the air is becoming thin. Knowing that the thriving cultural productions and activities build on active artist scenes, this report should worry us, I believe. So fewer and fewer galleries, for example, also in the Swiss context, can maintain their activities. And besides, more and more highly skilled art students with professional aspirations are graduating from art schools every year. So we have not everywhere the same picture, because I think within the Gulf state and the certain Asian sites, artists are telling me that their galleries are thriving and there are a lot of possibilities, but nevertheless that the sales are moving up to the top sales, to the mega sales. It's still the same dynamic that below there is little happening, and this means this is not good for a thriving art scene and for in future how art production will be nurtured. So this is sort of my entry point to art in action, artist working reality. In light of these developments, we should not underestimate this worldwide phenomenon of artists working reality. Artists are engaging ever more directly with the living environments and are taking an increasing holistic approach to working with art in social context. And they have the big picture in mind and are considering social factors. The critical goal is to initiate and to accompany change processes. So these go through conversational exchanges between people from different communities, as well as bottom-up, step-by-step strategies and suggestions and negotiations. And these developments are gaining ground. So a relevant body of literature addressing socially engaged, dialogical, conversational, relational art and art-led participatory processes has long been emerging and growing. Time doesn't permit me to discuss this in any detail, so let me offer some examples. So students in, first some remarks and then I'll come to the examples. So students in art educational settings are often asked to sharpen their conceptual aspects of their work. But community and real-life projects demand other skills. Among these, being able to build relationships of trust and commitment, that's essential. And needs are negotiated and transformed by stepping through various options. The future is understood to be shaped and produced, to be shapeable and producible. And as such, Art in Action projects value complex dynamics and provide platforms for multi-vocality and for visions nurtured by multi-perspectives. So in 2017, the Asian Biennial was titled Negotiating the Future, Challenging the Society and Creating the Future with Novel Art Forms. It was held at the National Taiwan Museum of Arts, and Ade Dharmawan, he was the Indonesian co-curator of the Biennial. He believes that art as a social practice is essential for us to view artistic practice as a way to speculate about the future. So talking about art, science, technology will completely change. A lot of people out there are now believing that it's happening also in this interlinkage to social practice. One of the participants at the Asian Biennial was the Java-based collective Jatiwangi Art Factory, rooted in a local initiative and integrated into community life. JAF launched the Supernatural Farming Investment Package at the Biennial. The Supernatural Farming Investor Package aimed to attract Taiwanese investors to build hanging gardens and hydroponics in Wates Hamlet. And Wates Hamlet is located in Jatisura village, in the Jatiwangi district, Majalengka Regency on Java, Indonesia. So the West Java area is undergoing rapid development at the moment, which will cause a massive urban transition closely connected to global capitalism. And the related changes have already affected the regional demographics. So the JAF team focuses on paralleling these capitalistic developments by building spaces and activities to culturally develop the area. At the Asia Biennial, the JAF Collective, together with Wates Village representatives, so that's also one of their marking points. They're never, it's never the artist up front, it's always the team and representatives of the community that they work with. So at the Asian Biennial, the JAF Collective, together with the village representatives, they held a performative business meeting. And the meeting went beyond purely symbolic artistic gestures to pursue tangible, but they wanted to pursue tangible results. They wanted to get the money back so that they can run other projects within that hamlet village. Java is full of many thriving initiatives. I see I'm gonna shorten it a bit. Otherwise I'm not getting to the end. So I just would like to refer to this webpage, Maya Vision. We have interviewed several of these groups in Java. So please have a look at it and listen to their statements about their work, about connecting people. A last example from the Jatiwangi Art Factory. Jatiwangi is an area where they used to produce roof tiles. So they were producing roof tiles for all over the world. And this has diminished very much. So, but their whole idea of thriving the cultural activities is now based on this clay production, roof tile production. So they want to become the new clayism area. And they have many activities along that line. And they also have a lot of artist exchanges. So I think I can only say it's great if you have a chance to go there and join in with their activities. One example are these roof tiles that Ismail Muntaha made. So it's a roof tile, and above it's shaped into a ghost. And there's a ritual tied to it. So every year, there's a call of who has contributed, who of the community in the Chattivandi district has contributed to the social good. And then that person gets awarded that roof tile. There's a ceremony. They walk to that house, and then they place it on the roof. So the aim, of course, is that in near future, all the roofs have a lot of these awarded trophies on their rooftops. Okay. I just let that run. We organized a lot of symposiums, etc. So these are some images of the projects that we've done for Flux. We bring together a lot of practitioners because we see that there's a need to share, not from a concept-oriented point of view, but from real experience practitioners have. And we do have a lot of questions of how to actually enroll these projects. So these symposiums, they're about sharing best practices and seeing how to profit from each other, how to connect, and how to bring things forward. And I very much thank you for your attention after such a long day. Thank you very much. If there are questions, I'm most happy to answer, maybe also remarks. And I would like to say I would be most interested to also hear more about Egyptian initiatives, and whatever kind of information, please just send me an email. It's Voorvlak, dl@voorvlak.net. So the last page then, let me go, okay. Here. dl@voorvlak.net. If you go to dominiquelamley.ch, from there it links to a lot of different web pages that we work on.